Everybody, happy Tuesday today. As you can see, I am back at school today. It's a bit weird. So hopefully you don't have too many technical problems. And today, I just want to go over how to finish this course, the Computer Science 30S course. You would have got an email from me about this, but I want to go over the details of that. I went over this with another class yesterday. And so I'm just going to play a portion of that video just so I don't repeat myself. And then after I get to a certain part, I'll pause it and go to specifics for this course. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and my audio with you guys for that purpose. Before I do, if you have any questions, let me know and I'll pause the video and answer your questions at any moment. Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. For those of you who were on the online class yesterday, as you know, I had all kinds of technical problems, so I'm re-recording this video after the fact to go over the content of what we dealt with on Monday's class. Okay, everybody. Okay, so I want to just go. A lot of what we dealt with Monday was looking over how to complete this course. This is something I'm going over with all my classes this week, and kind of as there's only a couple weeks left, and you email from me about this. But all the same information is also available on my website. So, oops, I'm just going to go to the first page of my website. And right here, as it says right here, we are now going into the last few weeks of this semester and this school year, and the school has marked June the 15th as the last day to complete essentially course materials, to get any new materials. I'm going to be done way before that. Here are the 4 basic facts you need to know about ending this unusual year, a year of a global pandemic and a school closure. First important fact, your final mark in my course will be the exact same mark that was on the March 13th, essentially the day the school closed. It was the same mark as the last reporting period. It is what's called the baseline mark. The province has instructed us as teachers that this is what your mark will be. There is a slight possibility that it could go up from there, but it'll never go down from there, okay? We'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, so that's the first basic fact. Second basic fact, there will be no required final assessment in any course. Okay, that means no final exam, not that there ever was one in computer science, and no required final project. The final project is not required for the computer science course. Okay, however, there is an option for a final assessment that I'm going to talk about in a minute. Not required, but an option. Okay, the next important fact, your comment on a report card is something that can change. Okay, so unlike your mark, which is locked, the comment I'm going to put on your report card is one of 4 possible comments, which I'm going to go over in a second. And finally, if you have made no attempts at online learning since the school is closed, as you will see, you will be put into the final report card comment category. And what has been said to us as teachers is that there is a possibility that any student that has made no attempts at connecting online might have to do a credit recovery on that course next year. Now, as it says in the email, there are lots of exceptions to this rule, okay? It's not one size fits all, that it's always going to be the same. There are lots of exceptions. It depends on the student. It depends on the course. It depends on what grade. There's lots of things there. So it's possible, for example, if you're doing Math 20S pre-calculus and you did no engagement, that the school will require you to do a credit recovery of math pre-calculus before you take grade 11 pre-calculus. But as far as option courses go, I don't know what the answers will be. I know that is a possibility. So if you're the student who's made no attempts at connecting online, then stay tuned. I have a possible solution to that. Okay, also in the email I gave you was the official provincial documentation for that. So there's links, for example, to what the province of Manitoba said specifically about learning at home and continuous learning. I've in the past connected to this document that kind of explained what the province was talking about with this. And even this new one, right on the province's website about what learning recovery, what online learning means for students this year. And you can see here, I've even included a quote from there that backs up what I just said, that your mark is essentially locked in with the possibility, or what they use the word opportunity, to make their mark improve. Okay? Then in that same document, it outlines what the 4 report card comments that I will be using for your final report card will be. It will be one of these 4 comments right here. Okay, so now you know what your mark is going to be on the report card, and you see what one of 4 possible report card comments will be. Let's start with the first one. Consistently. The way the province has defined this is that you participated all the time, or almost all the time, in online learning, which means you, for me and for my class, you connected to online classes like this one, or you did some work and then handed it in. Or if you were a student who couldn't connect due to technical problems, couldn't get the right software, or you had no internet at home, then you contacted me and I prepared a printed booklet for you that you took home and then got back to me in some format. If you did this all of the time or most of the time over the last 2 months, then you would be in the category of a consistently. And that's what will appear on your report card. The next step down from that would be usually. This would mean the same thing, that you in some way are engaging in online learning, but the province has defined that as you've done that about half of the time. So essentially, out of all the things you could have done to connect with me online, you did about half of them. The next step down from that would be sometimes. With that, they define that as less than half. So maybe you did answer 1 or 2 emails at the beginning of the school closure. Maybe you did a survey. Maybe you handed in 1 or 2 things. This would be maybe a category somehow between sometimes and usually. So these would be one of the 2 possible report card comments I could make. And in these last 2 weeks, obviously what you do in these next 2 weeks can obviously affect these spots. And then finally, the last category that you can get put into is the rarely category, which means you never or almost never did remote learning. You essentially ghosted me since the school closed in mid-March. Okay? We just talked about that. If you are in that category, the school has asked me to submit your name for possible credit recovery. Okay? But those will be the 4 possible comments that'll go on your report card. I then added a section in the email about my personal thoughts on the matter, right? So obviously, I've already posted over the school closure different reasons why I think it would be a good idea for you to continue your learning, okay? Not just from the fact that I'm a teacher and I think learning is important, but not just because I wanted you to make sure you didn't have to do credit recovery. Your mark was essentially locked in, but I wanted to make sure I fit the mandates as well, okay? I wanted to always let you know that I was flexible, okay? I wanted you to know that there were lots of ways you could connect with me. There's a big list of them in the email here of all the different ways you could have connected with me. I wanted to let you know that I understood that you had a lot going on. You had more than my course, so you had to balance your time. Maybe you had to balance it not just with all the courses, but with other relatives you had in the house that you had to share computers with. The province mandated that we only do a maximum of 3 hours a week expectation. I feel like I was well underneath that because I had to balance that. So I really kind of feel like I've done my part to try to get you guys to engage. As I said, there's a list of different things I've done for you guys here. This was in the email as well, including some ways to even inspire you to kind of continue learning, okay? Added a new resources page to my website, etc. So that's my pitch as to not just for the report card comment and the mark, but why I wanted you to engage online. And this is especially important for any of you students in grade 11, 10, or 9 who are planning on taking more computer science with me. Last thing you want is to feel really unprepared for the next course you're taking. And I think this is true across the board for every teacher. I also want you guys to know that no matter what level of engagement you have, every teacher in the school is right now preparing that when we start next fall, hopefully, or whenever we start in a more normal type of school environment, we expect that we're going to have to spend a little extra time getting most students caught up to sort of the level you should be at the start of that course. So for example, if I was your grade 11 math teacher, I should probably expect that when I start grade 11 math, I would expect to have to kind of go over a little more details from grade 10 math than I normally would. And it would be the same in my computer science classes. When I start grade 12 computer science class, I'm going to probably spend a little extra time reviewing grade 11 computer science, knowing the unusual circumstances that we're all in. But that's also a good reason why you want to stay on track with your learning, so you don't feel like really behind starting a new course. Okay, now as we enter the last few weeks of this course, I also included in the email ways that those 4 categories would be kind of fitting to what you want to do. So if you feel you're consistently been connecting to computer science since school closed, you've been tuning into the online classes like this one, if you've been handing in some work in, I don't want to say all your work, but you've been handing in work almost every week, okay, either through online or printed, well, then I would say that you are essentially done your computer science course. It's done, okay? If you wish to do some sort of a final assessment, that is an option for you, not a requirement. That final assessment as well does not have to be a traditional final project, programmed and put together. It's not going to be necessarily that. It can be that if you want to do that. That could be maybe something fun you'd want to do, but it could also be something in a more non-traditional way. So I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail later. What would be the benefit of doing this final project or final assessment if you have been consistently tuning in or consistently doing your work? Well, now I feel like now I could possibly raise that final mark a little bit more because you've demonstrated learning beyond what kind of you needed to. Okay, what if it is usually? What if you're in that category? You've done some of that stuff. Well, then what I say is you could do some sort of final assessment. Okay, again, not required. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you do some sort of final assessment, then I feel like that is where I could move you up from usually on your report card comment to consistently. Remember, your mark isn't changing, okay? So could I move you up from usually to consistently? So if you've done about half online engagement and now you're like, well, I'd like to have Mr. Watts put consistently on my report card as a comment, this would be where something like a little bit of a final assessment would be the thing I could use to essentially make up for the fact that you haven't engaged, more than half the time. Okay, then now what I want to talk about are the last 2 categories. This is where I'd say it's even more important to consider this option. If you are in the sometimes or the rarely category, especially if you are in the rarely category, you haven't done anything really since school, and you're worried, I'm going to put rarely on your report card, Mark, you're worried that maybe you're going to be moved to the option of, you know, credit recovery. Well, now I would say it's more of a must. Okay? I mean, yes, you could go back and do the work that, you know, over the last 2 months you haven't been doing, but why not instead think about doing a final project, which I will essentially count in lieu, meaning as a substitute for the last few months of not engaging. So that's an offer, okay? Your mark isn't going to change, but I will move you up from the rarely category to sometimes or even categories above. And the final assessment gives you an option to do that, okay? Same with sometimes, it's the same idea there, move you up. Okay, so let's talk about that final assessment, okay? If you want, you could do a final project in a traditional way. You could code something, showing me what you've learned in the course, like a game. Keep in mind, I will not be marking it the way I would normally mark it because it's not something that's required of everybody. But that's not what you have to do, okay? All I really am looking for a final assessment is a way to summarize what you've learned in a course, okay? So if you read the link here to what would have been the offline assessment, for those students who couldn't actually work on computer science on a computer, had to actually work on a printed piece of material, I actually created a last page to summarize the learning in that course. Okay, so it's actually summarized there, what you could do. And I even included a snippet of it on my website here and in that email, which is basically, one way is to write basically an essay saying, here's what computer science this course is about. It doesn't have to be an essay. It could be something more like a PowerPoint or a recorded video or something like that. I'm giving you a lot of freedom there to essentially summarize all the stuff you've learned in that course. Okay? So I have the grade 10 example. I have a grade 12 example. And if you're not sure, you can always contact me. Okay? As it says in there, if this is something you are considering, something a little bit different, let me know what you're doing and if you have any sort of outside the box ideas on how to accomplish that. That's it. That's finishing this course.
Okay. All right, everybody. I'm just going to. So that video was my attempt to explain how this course essentially wraps up. Now, what I want to just do the rest again is just to show you that all of that stuff was in the email I sent you, all of that same materials on the front of my website right now. Please contact me if you have any questions about it. If you also are someone who's considering doing some of the past few weeks worth of stuff, everything I've done with you guys is on our Computer Science 30S webpage. You may have noticed I changed it a little bit in the last couple days. I think it's improved quite a bit, but it still has the same weekly events it always did. So you can go through week after week right to when the school closed, back on week 7 when the school closed. Then after that, week 8, 9, 10, all the way up to the current week are all there. Each week has its own little video of going over the content there. So for example, last week I went over the optional graphics content. Graphics isn't normally something I mark and assess in the 30S course, but it's always sort of an extra at the end. And all I wanted to finish with it today was, again, those resources. Like, you've seen the resources to finish the course. I want to throw a couple more resources on there for you that you could use if you choose to kind of finish up the course with some sort of project. Okay? On the front of our website now, I've now added a help page right to the front page. If you actually click on it, it takes you to a specific page where you could get help on something like a finished project. Okay, so one of the things the help page has is all the sort of links to install NetBeans, assignment help and stuff like that. But then further down the list, and we saw this even before the school closed, I added a bunch of stuff for each unit, which was the kind of walks-throughs of each unit. So from the methods unit or the arrays or the classes unit, and you may have seen me access that if you were tuning into the online classes on how to do some of those assessments. But now I actually want to go to the very final sort of piece here. There's a final project gaming example that you could even look at with different levels of complexity. So that's also another resource, not at all one you need to do in this course, because I just went through the last few minutes explaining whether or not you should, could, or need to even do a final assessment. The answer, by the way, is no, you don't. You do not need to do a final assessment. It is not a requirement. It is an option. No, it doesn't have to be something programmed. It could be something written or PowerPoint or other, all kinds of flexibility there. But if you wanted to make something, this is yet another resource. And if you click on this, it takes you to a GitHub page, okay, which has a project in it. You can download that project if you want. You could just download it and open it up. Or if you don't want to download it, you can go into the source code. You could find that I have some gaming examples that involve movement, or some gaming examples that involve a grid, okay? And I just want to show you how that essentially would look as well. I'm gonna live download this for you guys just to show you what I've prepared for you guys. Just as another sort of example of thing you could do here. So I'm just going to, am I sharing my screen? I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share my screen. This will make more sense when I share my screen. Okay, let me go back and do that again. So what I'm saying is, from our 30S page, there is now a page called Help that you can click on. From Help, it has all the stuff it normally had from before, including, you might remember, that stuff about that's covered in the videos on how to work on methods, arrays, and classes. But now this is the gaming example I was just talking about, okay? There's also a video, but that is about how it's normally marked and stuff like that. That's not going to apply this year. But if you wanted to, and you clicked on that gaming example, it would take you to a GitHub page, and you could literally download it, which I'm about to do. And then I'm going to take that downloaded example. Once it's downloaded, there it is. Put it on my desktop. I'm going to unzip it to my desktop. A little slow, but we're going to get there. And I'm going to open up NetBeans to use it. But again, you don't have to do the whole example. You could go into the GitHub and look through all this stuff if you need to. Remember, there is no requirement that you do a final project. That's what that video explained to you. All I'm doing is providing resources for you guys at the end of the course. Speaking of which, another resources GitHub opens up there that I hope you guys have seen is on my student alumni page, a bunch of inspirational stuff for you guys, okay? One, there are these inspirational videos from former students who have offered their time and given you guys some inspiration as to why studying computer science might be a good idea. So there's some really good ones there. And then as well, recently, I've also included some guest lectures from past students. So the latest one, I have one coming up this Friday as well. The latest one was, as you can see, Careers in Software Development by a former student named Melissa. And you can watch that whole lecture she did live for a class online on my website as well. So hopefully those are inspirational stuff for you guys. Anywho, I'm just waiting for NetBeans to finish downloading or launching. Then we'll do that. And yeah, so you saw me download that gaming example live right off my website. You could be literally doing the same thing I'm doing now. Launch NetBeans. My apologies, I should have had it launched ahead of time. And again, this is right off our 30S page. And I've recently rebuilt the page. Obviously, schedule doesn't matter to you guys. Content doesn't really matter. Examples, assessments. But this help page was the page where I showed you could get at the access to an example of a final project. Okay, so I'm going to open that right off the desktop now. Hopefully. Hopefully it's very slow, but I'm opening it. And then I'll wrap up today's online class because I don't have anything to really teach you. I don't have any assessments to go over. We'd gotten ourselves up to that point. So now it's just a matter of you thinking, how do you want to finalize this course? Your mark is locked. Which report card comment you have is totally in your control. Contact me if you have any questions. But yeah, so I'm going to open that right now. The gaming example. And I'm going to run it. Try to run it. As it tries to run, I'm going to open up. So you can see there, in this game example, there's lots of different actual examples broken up into different parts. And each of those can have a piece of code or even a design thing like was shown in the graphics example, if you want to look at it that way. Okay, so for example, this one it's slowly trying to get everything going here. It's a little bit of a design, and all the code behind it is there as well. Anyways, there's lots of things you could pick away at, and they're not really games. They're just sort of examples of what you could potentially move forward into gaming, kind of an idea. So that's what it is. Anyways, yeah, and I put tons of comments in the code as well to really try to explain everything the best I could. Okay. Why are we not running here? Let's try that again. Okay, it's attempting to run it right now. Dramatic pause. I will put this class video online as well, where if you need to rewatch anything on what I explained, you can do that. I'm just talking to fill in the gap while we're waiting for this sample gamey thing to start. Oh, here it is. Okay, so here you can see I've started with just this little thing that says, would you like to see an example of level 1 movement? Let's take a look at what that would look like. Level 1 movement. So it's very simple, just something that looks like this. And I can use my keyboard to essentially keep moving the hero around to try and get to the objective. I can't go through walls. If I touch the enemy, it closes. You lose, and we're done. Okay? So that's very simple. Level 1, it's all in one file. Level 2, I break it up into multiple classes a little bit. So it's a little more involved. Okay? So it requires you to know about classes to work on level 2. So you can see here, it's using some stuff that's a little fancier, some timers. The enemies are actually moving around, but I still can't get through the walls. In this case, instead of hitting an enemy and dying, I'm going to get to the objective, which would also essentially end the game. Okay? And then finally, a level 3 project for movement. Would, you can see here, I've actually got a whole sort of Pac-Man thing laid out. It's obviously a little more complicated. Sounds and all the rest. So it's obviously I've taken it up another level. Obviously I've taken it up another level for movement 3. So you can see here, if it was movement 1, it's just one file with code and comments to read and to kind of use as a basis for building something. Movement 2, I've broken it up into multiple classes. So you have to kind of do it that way. Movement 3 is not only multiple classes, but multiple what they call packages and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch more sort of involved if you wanted to get to that level, but it's there for you if you're interested. But not every gaming type example uses movement. Some of it uses a grid. So the other 3 examples I also included in this was grid-based examples. I'm going to show you one of those. So grid 1, as you can see, is just simply this. And now using the arrow key, it just moves the hero around the grid. That's it. There's no enemies or anything like that. It's just moving around. It does stop at the edge of the grid, so that's something it does. And that's all it would be for level 1. Okay, and again, you could go in and read all the code with comments to kind of get a feel for how that works. Grid 2 also expands into multiple classes. Not as many as movement, but grid 2 also breaks into multiple classes. So I tried to add a few features to grid 2. Oh, where's grid 2? It's just sluggish. I'll just take a second to get it all up and running. Things are running pretty slow today for me. Here it comes. So with grid 2, the way I did it was it's sort of like a drawing. It's not really a game, but you can see it's a very tight grid, and you can click and essentially, sort of like the graphics example, it just draws a bunch of stuff on the screen. It tracks the mouse and fills in a bunch of squares on the screen. So that would have been grid level 2. And then grid level 3, I tried to make an actual game for grid level 3 that wasn't just sample code. But obviously grid level 3 also uses multiple classes and stuff to work. And I thought I'd make like a snake game for grid level 3. So here you can see I can start moving, and like the game Snake, I can eat that and the snake grows. I'm not very good at this game, but you get the idea. And if I hit the wall or if I hit myself, it's game over. Okay. They included a little high score thing that you can use there on the example there. So all of those are available to you. They're all kind of at the 30S level of coding. So it's all the content from the units we studied. So methods, arrays, and classes. Obviously the level 3 examples push it even a little bit further, but not beyond like general studying in this course. Okay, so that's it. That's everything I want to say in today's online class. If you have any questions at all, you can ask, you can email me, and as you saw in the beginning part of today's class, you can be done and you can be on summer. Your mark is what it is, and your report card comment's one of those 4, and that's it. Any questions? Okay, I'll see you guys next time.